Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing great. So the end of the year is upon us. It's going to end in a few days and I thought it is the perfect time to share my yearly wrap up, which means I'm sharing with you all the books that I've read in 2021. So in all honesty, 2021 wasn't a very great reading year. I read way less than I wanted to, which means that I actually set my reading goal on Goodreads for reading 100 books this year. And from the very beginning, I knew I was being too ambitious, but then I thought of the saying that, if you aim for the moon, you will land up amongst the stars at least. But when it comes to my reading this year, I did not even enter space, I guess. So it was not a very good reading year. I think I read just 18 books or something, but anyways, I'm still sharing with you everything that I read, and I'll also tell you if I liked it or not and share my opinions in brief about them. So all the books that I read are here over here with me, and I'm going to share them with you in no particular order. The first one is Roads to Missouri by Ruskin Bond. This is a non-fiction book by him. It's like his experiences in Missouri where he lives also currently. And to be very honest, I think I've read more of non-fiction by Mr. Bond than his fiction works, because he has a way with words. Seriously, he can make any dull, mundane thing look very extraordinary and beautiful through his writing. So I really enjoy reading his memoirs and anecdotes from his life, and as expected, this one also was a great read. Next up, we have The Shining by Stephen King. I read this because I heard about this in Friends when Joey reads the book, and ever since then I've wanted to read it. I think it's a weird reason, but anyways, so it's a horror book, and it's a thick one, and for the first half I think nothing really scary happens, and it's kind of difficult to be encouraged to keep on reading the book, but there are some elements that will help you keep on going. But once you reach the later half of the book, it actually starts getting a little bit like thrilling. So it's like a psychological thriller, more than like actual jump scare horror, but by the end you will end up liking the book as I did, and it was a nice read. Okay, so up next we have Two Fates by Judy Balan, which is kind of like a continuation of the Two States story, but now the couple, who fought so much to get married, now they think they're not compatible and now they want a divorce, which is not very possible in, an Indian family, to convince your parents that you want a divorce, especially when they are getting along very well. So it was a nice book. It has subtle humor, a very light-hearted read. So next we have A Streetcar Named Desire, which is actually a play, a very famous one for that, and that is why I've always wanted to read it. And let me tell you, I liked the play when I read it, but now that I think about it, I don't remember much of the story. So definitely an average read for me. If I don't remember what happened, definitely it was not extraordinary, but I remember that it wasn't a bad read, and I won't say that I don't recommend it at all. It's a nice one-time read. Then we have Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. This one I actually read for university, but I'm glad that I did, because it's like really interesting. It has some really nice viewpoints about colonialism, and not just viewpoints, just kind of what actually happened in Africa during those days. And it has a lot more that it explores, like how a community functioned in those days, what were the gender equations, a lot of stuff. So it's a really nice read, and I think everyone should give this a try. Then we have The White Tiger by Arvind Arriga. Again, one of my favorite reads from the year. It has really nice comments on the Indian political system, Indian social scenario and everything. I read a lot at a lot of places, people criticized this book to, they just said that things are exaggerated in here. But I don't think I share that same point of view. I understand where they are coming from, but a lot of things that he has talked about are true. They do happen in India, and his style of narration was very interesting, very impressive. So overall I ended up liking the book. Now, around the middle of the year, I had this very weird urge to read something Japanese, obviously not in the Japanese language, translated into English, other than Murakami. So I was just looking for Japanese books on Amazon and other people's recommendations, and then I came across this one, which is The Maiden of the Blue Willow and Other Japanese Folk Tales. I also really liked the cover, and I thought it's been a long time since I read any folk tales, so it would be a different kind of read. But this one also was a little underwhelming. The stories were very average. I don't know if it's because of the translation that the essence of the stories was lost, or the stories themselves were pretty average. I don't know what happened over there, but yeah, just a very, very average read. The only story that I absolutely enjoyed reading was Earless Hoichi. Other ones were just okay. Then we have a Bliss Bakery story, Bliss by Catherine Littlewood. This one I finished very recently, and it was an enjoyable read. It's about these, four siblings, especially the protagonist, Rose, and their parents are like magical bakers. So they bake these magical goods to solve different kinds of problems around the town. But then Rose is, left alone with her siblings in charge of the bakery for a week, I guess. And, she really, really wants to try magic herself. And then they have this visitor, Aunt Lily. And Rose is not really sure if she should involve her and everything. And then, they make these magical recipes and they go wrong, and things in the town go all topsy-turvy. And then you have to read what happens if things go back to normal and all. So it's a very, very light-hearted, enjoyable read. And if you like reading magical books, then this is a nice one. There was just one line in it which I just did not like, and I also mentioned about it on my Instagram posts. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, then check out my Instagram profile. So now we have my favorite, absolute favorite book from the year, which is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I also did a video on this book very recently, and I still think that that doesn't do justice to this book. I have so much to talk about it. But yeah, I absolutely loved the book, especially its main characters, Scarlet and Red. I loved them. I just really, really enjoyed reading it. Next one I have is Rhinoceros by Eugene Ionesco. This one again I read for university, and I liked reading the play. It's something very different. I haven't read something like this ever before, and it's an absurdist play, and till date I don't think I've fully understood what it is about, which I think does justice to the fact that it's an absurdist play. But it has a lot of points to make about existentialism, and also about the political scenario in the author's time and everything. So it was an interesting play to read, really something different. So if you are always on the lookout to read things out of the box, then this is one play you should definitely read. So next is again one of my favorite reads from this year, which is The Good Person of Sichuan by Bertolt Brecht. Again, I read it in university, for university, and I absolutely loved it. The way it explores, the question of gender and how each gender is treated differently in the society, and what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. Very, very nicely portrayed, and very nicely, they explore, the author explores the topic. And again, it's not just about the gender equation. It has a lot more to offer, and I just really, really urge everybody to read this one. Another book that I read this year for university is Ghosts by Henrik Ibsen. This one I really liked because its language is pretty easy to understand, and this is one of those books which shows the society its own face, its own hypocrisies, and that is why I really like it. It has very limited characters, a very simple storyline to follow, and a lot of interesting insights about the society. Another book that I read very early this year actually was Woodring Heights by Emily Bronte. This I read because I wanted to read a classic. I was really into classics at that time. I still am. And I've always heard of Woodring Heights, and naturally I wanted to read it. And I think it was a great read again. People really love, Heathcliff as a character and everything. There are a lot of, posts about him, and I kind of understand why after reading the book. So if you are a classics person, then this is one book you should definitely read. And I feel it is such a winter read. Argue with me on this one. There's something about this book that makes me want to read it during winters, which I actually did also. So yeah, a nice read. Another one of my favorites from the year, which I've also recommended a lot of times to a lot of people, is Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is such a short book, and that's also one thing I love about it. It's very short and crisp, and yet it makes a lot of points. And what's interesting is that it's not a typical murder mystery. So at the very beginning of the book, you know who is murdered, then you get to know who murdered him, and you also get to know that why he was murdered. But still, the book manages to keep you interested in reading out the story about what actually happened that day. Marquez is known for his magical realism, and you find some elements of that also in the book. And as the name says, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. So, people around the town knew that the murder was going to happen. They knew who's going to murder whom. Yet it happens. So it's very interesting to explore why, even after the whole town knowing about the murder, nobody can stop it. One of my favorite reads from the year. And the last novel, which was ironically the first one that I read this year, is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Again, I really wanted to read a classic, and it's something of, in the gothic genre, and I was a lot into that. That's why with Woodring Heights also. So I ended up loving this book also. So it's about this guy, Dorian Gray, very beautiful, very charming. So once he looks at one of his portraits, he kind of is instilled with the fear that, the portrait will never get old. But he will, he'll develop wrinkles. He'll not always be as beautiful as the painting. And he kind of sells his soul for eternal youth. So it's very interesting to read what are the consequences. Very interesting to read and kind of question everything around you, question morals, question things that we do, question things that we give importance to, a lot to explore in the book. So these were all the novels that I read, but I also read 2 or 1.5 poetry books. The first one is I Was the Wind Last Night by Ruskin Bond. Yes, there are some poems in the book that I loved reading. I even have them marked. I read them again and again because they are so beautifully written. But, everyone knows I'm a big Ruskin Bond fan. But this is one book which was a little underwhelming for me. A lot of the poems in the book, I don't know, I didn't like them a lot. I also shared on my Instagram the poems and the lines that I really liked from the book. But overall, it was a pretty average read. Another poetry book that I haven't read completely, but some poems I've read, is 100 Selected Poems by Emily Dickinson. I read this solely because of Emily Dickinson. I read a couple of her poems for university, and I loved her writing style. I loved the topics she wrote on, and that is why I bought this. And the few poems that I've read from the book, I have really liked. So I think this is a nice book to invest in if you like reading poetry. Apart from all of this, I also read some short stories and standalone poems that I also really love. So that was really everything I read this year. I know not a lot, and hopefully next year is much better in terms of reading. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel, and do not forget to hit the notifications bell icon, because whenever I'll be posting any video, you will be notified first. You can also follow me on my Instagram. The link to my Instagram will be in the description, and the handle will also be mentioned on the screen right over here. So go ahead and follow me. I'll meet you in the next year. Bye.